Broadcasting from the 72nd floor of First Canadian Place in the heart of Toronto's financial district, this is #Finance, the podcast that profiles innovative entrepreneurs and thought leaders operating in the public markets. Presented to you by the CSE, the Exchange for Entrepreneurs.
Hi, I'm Grace Pedota, and welcome to another episode of #Finance. I'm here with Helen Bilhete from Newsfile. Hi, Helen. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me, Grace.
Absolutely.
I'm doing really good.
Yeah, we go way back.
Yes.
When did I meet you first? How many years ago was that?
Oh, I would think it maybe about 6 or 7 years ago when you were with another company, kind of in a similar role. And I think I was doing consulting work for that company. Had my own IR business at the time, and the principal had hired me to do a database project for him because he needed some help with managing some contacts and building that.
Great. And so what is your new role at Newsfile?
With Newsfile, I do corporate development for them. So what that really is sales. So I help build their profile, bring in new clients, negotiate new contracts and clients. All I do all day long is work with our competitors' clients and getting them to switch over, go to events and meet new clients that are publicly traded companies that need to work with a newswire service and just get our name out there and get them to work with us.
Great. And so so let's talk a little bit more about Newsfile and what they do.
Okay. Newsfile is a TSX-authorized newswire service. In Canada, by law, publicly traded companies have to work with a newswire service. There's about a handful of them that they can choose from. Newsfile has been in business for over 20 years. My colleagues that started Newsfile actually worked with me back in 1998 when we started with another company called BCE Emerges, which then got merged many, many times, became CCN Matthews, and that's how I got to know all of my publicly traded companies, specifically in the mining industry. Worked closely with them. And now Newsfile's grown. A lot of TSX companies are switching to us, and I'm back working with my old colleagues. They've made a success out of it, and we're hoping to make it a bigger success and continue with that. So we work with publicly traded companies. We do CDAR filings, EDGAR filings, news release distribution, compete toe-to-toe with our competitors. The distribution's exactly the same, and we offer better pricing, better service, and we're a Canadian-owned company.
Great. And so I just want to go back to a better service. What does that look like for a company like Newsfile? I know that at the conference that we were previously at Stable View in Toronto, Ontario, you had mentioned that, there were a lot of people that were reluctant to use to file CDAR or to use your services at Newsfile. And why is that?
I think a lot of that has to do with education. They need to be educated that Newsfile has the exact distribution that our competitors do. Like I said, by law, TSX authorized wire services, we have to have certain feeds to all these points. And those points, what that means is that the news has to go out simultaneously. So nobody gets news before anyone else to prohibit insider trading. So with Newsfile, while people are reluctant, we're not that new. We've been around 20 years in the business, but we built our business first with CDAR and EDGAR. The majority of law firms work with us that way. And then we got TSX authorized, so later on in those 20 years. So it's just building trust and educating clients that you're getting the exact same distribution. I actually tell clients it's like a courier service. So here I am meeting with you, Grace. You gave me your address. I know exactly where First Canadian Place is. First Canadian Place is not going to move. That's the feed. That's the address. How I got here, whether I chose to walk, better price, Uber, a little bit more expensive, or limo it in, very expensive, is my choice. But that feed, one First Canadian Place, is not going to move. So I compare a newswire service to that. You have to feed these points by law, to be TSX authorized. What method of route you take, so what newswire you choose is up to you. So better service and better pricing means The distribution's the same, so the address won't move. It's the same. You got to pick someone that you trust, that understands your business, that can get your instructions right and get your news out there is a given, but also provides you service when in consulting with you. For example, I used to do IR. I'm the only sales rep right now in the Newswire business that has been on both sides of the table.
Yeah.
Yes, so I have consulted people like Rob McEwen all the way to small junior CEOs throughout my career. So their clients are looking for service not only from our newsroom, but from your rep. You got to be knowledgeable. You got to be able to connect them with people if they need it, give them advice, change their headline, and they want to work with a good company that's ethical and Canadian. That makes a difference too. Some companies do like to work with other Canadian companies, especially CSE listed companies. They want the boutique feel, and that's what CSE provides them. That's what we provide them. So I think we have a good fit that way too.
That's great. And you've been in IR for how many years now?
Ooh, actually, if you want to talk news, I started in 1989.
Okay.
And 1989 is I was the third person hired to launch part of a marketing team of CBC News World in Canada, Canada's first 24-hour news station. I'm the third person they hired to launch that in Canada, competing with CNN. I'm still friends with the original team. I worked for the King Kong of the television business, a guy called Gary Greenway, who instilled fear in all the other television executives, and I worked very closely with him. And actually, he's who made me who I am into achieving all that I have throughout the years. So 98, I started in news, and then I did a little stint with a personnel company that wasn't for me. I was very successful with that company, number one in North America of an American company in sales, but I didn't like the environment. And a headhunter came after me and said, "Do you want to go back to news?" I said, "Yes, please." And BCE Emergis was hiring. They were the third newswire service and company in Canada that was being launched. I'm used to launching news companies. So I was the first rep that was hired to start BCE Emergis that then got bought by CCN Matthews. And I was doing so well with them. I was with them 7 years that I got approached by one of my clients, Wade Daw from Linear Gold, to come work for him and do IR and make more money and travel. And I thought, sounds
that the
good.
dream?
It's a bit of a risk, but let me take a risk. I'm always a risk taker. So I took the risk and I did IR for about 8 or 9 years on my own. I had my own company and I was consulting different companies. And from Wade, Rob McEwen then hired me on my first on the spot after a 2-hour interview, but I worked for him for a little bit. And then I worked with other mining companies, Andina Minerals, Antioquia Gold, and so on. And then I went to the buy side because mining dried up, and I went to go work for Morningstar. I wanted to learn more about the buy side and build relationships there in case I go back to IR. That's important. So I'm always learning and building on my relationships to make myself valuable. So I lasted 2.5 years with Morningstar. I was the director of sponsorship sales for their investor awards that they had for 21 years. And OSC put a stop to that, so they didn't need me anymore. And I've been working on Toronto Street for 15 years. So I ran into my colleague Ian, who is the co-founder of Newsfile, told him I'm looking for work. He's like, "Come work with us." I'm like, "This is great. I don't mind working with a Newswire again, with people that I like and with my clients that I like." So I really love what I do. I've been with them now, I think, going on 5 years.
That's amazing.
It's been a while.
And if there was one other job you could do other than IR and news, what would it be?
Wow.
Something completely different.
Completely different. Since I was a little girl, I always wanted to do acting.
Okay.
And I was always like, acting and comedy was important to me. And I could never do it. Why? Because I was too busy working, making money. I was also a single mom, raising my son, saving money to buy properties. My first house I bought at 18.
Let's go back to that because I remember you were talking about that when you first walked in.
Yeah.
So you left Portugal at what age?
2.
Okay.
2. My parents brought me here. So I grew up in Toronto my whole life downtown. So we started at Spadina and Bloor, then Dufferin and Bloor, so that whole downtown area. Left home at 17, too ambitious. I started working in sales at 14, became the number one sales rep of a Portuguese, it was a photo company, but I had to call the Portuguese phone book. So it was telemarketing. And that's how I learned freedom, because they paid me commission then, $4 an appointment. So if I made enough, and I had to give my mother the paycheck. So if I made enough money with my $4 an appointment that it looks like I was working 5 days every day after school, I negotiated with my boss, if I make this kind of money in 3 days, can I get 2 days off? He said, sure. And that's the only way I went to movies with boys. My mother thought I was working. So yes, so it started there, and then I've always been in sales my whole life. Never worked in a store, never worked in a restaurant. Always sales, from telemarketing at 14 to now.
And would you say sales is something that you are that you just have as skills that, you can't really learn those skills? They're just
comes with experience. You do have to learn. I'll be honest with you. As a little girl, I was shy. People are shocked when I tell them
shy?
that. I was shy.
If anyone knows Helen Bilhete, she is the most, how do I put this? Anyone can spot you in a room.
Oh,
you're
wow.
And you're not afraid. You're very courageous, which, I remember when I met you for the first time, that's what I was like, oh, wow, you don't care what other people think. And that's a really good thing to have, especially when you're in sales.
Yes, thank you. And it's also, I think, experience and just living in the big city and working on Bay Street. You got to be courageous, because if you don't ask, you don't get. That's the number one sales thing.
I'm just learning that this year.
You don't ask, you don't get. And what's the worst they can say? No, you're no better off than you were before you asked. So,
exactly.
I just learned a lot throughout my experiences, and I was forced to be outgoing. When you start learning that your mother's not buying you clothes anymore, and you love clothes, and the only way you can buy clothes is with your part-time job money, you hustle and you learn not to be shy, and then you have fun with it. And then before you know it, it's almost like it's a whole different personality, which goes back to the job that I've always wanted to do that I can't because I need money to sustain my life as an independent woman, is acting. I always wanted to do acting. And later on in life, about 5 years ago, I did. And I've been on some national commercials in this country, like actually not this country, the globe. Special K, Kellogg's Special K, #own it. That commercial for the last 5 years been all over the world. And it was in like this ring that I bought, a David Yurman ring, to remind me of my acting side career, which is not really a side career. It's kind of a fun thing. You can't maintain that because that doesn't pay my bills, but it was fun for when it's at. But this ring is a David Yurman 18 karat custom made garnet with 8 pave diamonds that I bought with 1 residual check from Special K.
Wow.
So, it
That's
doesn't pay
awesome.
the
It's
bills,
beautiful.
but it buys you a little treat. And it was fun.
And
it was
it's
shot
a nice
in 2
little
hours.
reminder.
Yes, thank you.
And just lastly, before we kind of close off conversation here, I just want to go over any tips and tricks that the lovely Helen Bilhete can give us girls on Bay Street for like beauty tips and
Oh, well, Girls on Bay Street. Luckily, there's more and more on Bay Street. But I think with me it's important to be one of the boys sometimes. And what I mean by that is have their confidence, not be afraid. Going back to what you said, not being afraid what they think, and not being afraid to stand out. If anything I do on Bay Street is I don't want to blend in with anybody. I am me. I even went as far as cutting my black colored hair and letting it grow its glitter and then chop it to stand out and be unique. I don't like being copied. So I think being unique is important. It gets you remembered, especially if you're in sales. If you act professionally and you have a professional track record and you stand out and you're honest and truthful and ethical and you align yourself, that's another thing for women on Bay Street. For me personally, as I got older, I'm a little bit more stricter now, is aligning myself with associating with the right people. Because there's a lot of people on Bay Street that want to use you, especially if you're connected and starting to get known. So you got to be careful with that. So you want to align yourself with the right people, and you want to give back and mentor. And I know there's some girls that'll be listening to this saying that I have mentored them. And that's the number one thing, is being fearless and pleasantly persistent. if you're in sales. That's important.
Pleasantly persistent, yes.
That's good.
Well, thank you so much, Helen, for joining me today. It's wonderful to have you on the podcast and to get a different perspective. I love having females on Bay Street join me for a conversation, and especially so that any other female viewers can learn and take advice from them.
That's great. It's important. And thank you for having me. I really appreciate it, Grace. You're a wonderful Bay Street lady as well, and you do stand out too.
Well, thank you.
So thank you for your time.
Broadcasting from the heart of Toronto's financial district at the top of First Canadian Place, CSE TV is your trusted source for what's happening in capital markets. Our Hashtag Finance podcast series gets you exclusive long-form interview content with visionary entrepreneurs and CEOs of companies in the news. The CSE's On the Street segments get you up close and personal with many of our listed companies. And don't forget that you can find the video version of this and all our media on our CSE TV channel on YouTube. For instant notifications, subscribe to CSE TV now.